Good afternoon. My name is Ulrich Seldensacht. I hope you're all doing fine and safe in these difficult times. A couple of months ago, we started with these GDPR sessions online, data protection on the remits of GDPR Salon. Today is yet another of our series on data protection, and we've invited an interesting guest speaker from the Netherlands, CIP. But before I hand over the word, a couple of words on introduction. So in the past couple of weeks, we've seen quite a numerous series of activities happening from all of us in the world. We try to keep up with the new challenges, the new normal as we define it also ourselves. We see that people are increasingly moving into digital, and from the digital space trying to cope with their next challenges and their office environments. But of course, the data protection authorities are not standing still either. And while we are trying to cope with webinars and with online conferences, and slowly but surely returning to business and to office, the speed of all of these activities are just wrapping up again. So digital is basically everything that we are talking about here. We see that many activities in terms of the business have speeded up their digitalization transformation activities, and so are we. So GDPR Salon, which was supposed to take place last week, has been reformatted and retransformed into GDPR Salon Online. And I'm happy that we are still capable of working with a number of our guest speakers to do so. So every week, already since the beginning of April, with a couple of hitches on the road due to some days off, official days off, we had already a couple of interesting insights in how to manage GDPR from a best practice perspective in information practicing environment, but also on how to manage cookies in this day and age, and then specifically on some international best practices as well, coming from France, Germany, and other neighboring countries, and then luckily today also the Netherlands. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll be continuing with these activities, and we'll be focusing on some interactions with the GBA here in Belgium, the DPA from Belgium, and having a couple of interactions with the Incident Management Committee through Heike Helstra, and afterwards also with their communication departments to see what is specifically planned by the Data Protection Authority here in Belgium in the next couple of months. So a couple of words about LSEC, the organizers of this webinar. LSEC is an association of IT security companies which has been around for about 2 decades, and we bring together the expertise of IT security, data protection as well, with the end users, in this case, the many different vertical industries. So more than 460 vendors or system providers, system integrators, as well as advisory and research institutions. And then together with about 15,000 corporates and users that we see participating in these webinars also on a regular basis. This is not the only webinar that we do. We organize many different ones. But next to the webinars, we also have quite a number of project activities, some that have to do with cybersecurity, some that have to do with industrial automation, some that have to do with the processing of information. Earlier this morning, we had an interesting webinar on identity and access management, which is to us still one of the core infrastructures in relation to data protection as well. But also to everything related to cybersecurity. And so an interesting perspective that also made us think a bit about the digital transformation challenges, or also about the data protection challenges that we are looking into. So Hendrik Parmentier, who has been inviting us into the challenges in relation to putting into place an identity and access culture, or in this case, probably also a governance culture of data protection. Another interesting one that we have shown earlier this week was a visit by China Mobile, who presented their 5G deployment And as you can see, one of the cases in still today in early stage, but going towards a nationwide deployment, is the 5G smart policing security solution that China Mobile has been deploying together with the police services. And of course, I draw your attention in this specific webinar because, as you can see, the deployment of surveillance systems when it comes to both drones, AR glasses, the use of surveillance cameras is widespread, and that is going to a very specific policing cloud, virtual private network environment over the new 5G environment. So these are the things that innovation also in cybersecurity are bringing us. They're bringing us some new capabilities, but also some new challenges. So looking a bit into the challenges and into the things that are coming up, we also wanted to have a bit of reflections like we did in the last couple of weeks with some of our neighbors, friends, in this case from out of the Netherlands. And we've invited Walter van Wijk from the CIP, the CIP, who will be sharing with us a little bit of their best practices in the Netherlands from the CIP. Walter will be able to introduce to us what CIP is doing towards public authorities, but also to a number of end users. And so thank you very much, Walter, for joining in. And thanks also for taking the time and the effort to participate in this webinar. Unfortunately, we don't have you here in person due to the Corona situation. We were supposed to have a nice meal and dinner last week, but we have postponed it. Next week, the restaurants here in Belgium are opening up again. You have experienced that already, maybe in the Netherlands. So how is it? How is the Corona picking up in the Netherlands? Or maybe to put the question differently, how is the Corona affecting maybe also companies and maybe also CIP today, and maybe also towards the impact of data protection?
Well, thank you very much for your introduction, Ulrich. I understand that we are joined by participants from Austria and France and Belgium and Holland and maybe even more than that. So we're very welcome to you all. Well, Corona is of course hitting us all across the globe. Yesterday we had a press conference from our Prime Minister, and he mainly talked about holidays, which countries would open up and which wouldn't, and how to deal with that. So as I understand it, many countries in Europe will be open from the 15th of June for holidays. So the tourist industry is expecting more people making bookings again, but we have to see and wait how that goes. Corona is also a part of my presentation, but it's a minor part. What I'd like to do is to tell you a little bit about our organization. Let me try to share my screen with you. If everything works out fine, you can see my slide here.
Yeah, perfectly. And we can see you as well.
Well, my name is Walter van Wijk. I work for the CIP. CIP stands for the Centrum for Information Security and Privacy Protection. And I want to talk a little bit about us as an organization, because we seem to be a special kind of organization that inspires people to work a little bit like we do, because we seem to do some things right. And I want to talk to you about the Dutch situation concerning privacy. And this is a short list of contents, a little bit about privacy tools, about the DPO, the Data Protection Officer in Holland. Also, I want to share with you some specific things that the AP, the Autoriteit Persoonsgegevens, the Dutch DPA, is focusing on. And we are working on a Corona app in this country, and I'd like to share some specific details about that as far as I understand it is happening now. Okay. The Centrum for Information Security and Privacy Protection was founded in 2012 in the slipstream of the DigiNota thing. Maybe you heard about that. The DigiNota thing had to do with certificates for websites, and it went up to MI5, MI6, National Security Agency. This was also a global cyber crisis, which made things to happen and change in Holland anyway. So some initiatives were born to increase information security and privacy protection, and CIP is one of them. We were founded by some execution organizations in the Dutch government, and our main focus is to make a relevant impact on improving the information security and privacy levels of all Dutch government organizations in the wider sense. And I'll talk to you a little bit about who is participating in our network. But working together, as you see on this slide, is something that we really do very well, because this is the core of what we are and what we do. Working together means that we don't see ourselves as a knowledge center. We see ourselves as brokers or matchmakers of people, because the knowledge is in the network. And we work for the Dutch public sector. I used to say government, but the public sector is a little bit wider. We have government people, but also people from education and from the care industry also, which are also part of our network. I see that one of my colleagues is starting up on the wrong side of the line, but that will work out. Okay, we have some principles. We've started as a community organization. So we want to create and we want to share knowledge. And knowledge can be many things, and I'll go into that a little bit later on the next slide. But that's what we do. We are knowledge-based, and we do that for all in this public sector in Holland, and we do that by all. So we want our participants to join up, to share knowledge, to participate in creating knowledge. We do not charge any money. We don't have a business model. We don't do business. We share and create information and knowledge and help to increase the levels of information security and privacy. So we do not charge for becoming a member. We do not charge for participating in our meetings. We do not charge for using our products, but we do ask commitment and knowledge and time. So this is very much a volunteer-based organization. We started off as a network organization with many communities, but we also became an executive organization to run government programs. In fact, we only do 2 programs for one of the main ministries in the country. One is the BO, the Baseline Information Overheid stands for government, and ICO stands for Information Security, Inkoop Cybersecurity Overheid, which stands for Purchasing Cybersecurity Rules. What you can tell the people you want to purchase stuff from, hardware, software, and what kind of security rules you want to give them, that the products they want to deliver have to come up with. So some programs, but most of it is still a network organization, a community organization. We strongly believe in personal communication. That means that we never invite the world to our meetings. We have a network with participants, and of them we have contact information, of course, but we always invite people personally with personal name, with first name basis, per mail for our meetings and the things that we do. We believe in personal communication. And we also follow energy. In Dutch, you have an expression which says you don't want to pull a dead horse, because that requires a lot of energy and it gives you nothing except maybe some meat. But we don't want to pull on dead horses. So we only participate and use things and topics that people in our network have energy for, have interest in, want to participate in. And sometimes it starts with a lot of energy, and maybe 2 years later the energy is all gone, and then we stop it if there are no real reasons to continue with that activity. So we only do nice things and things that are fun and useful, and deliver gratitude, which is good. Well, one of the bullets is also Creative Commons. And Creative Commons is one of the license rules that says that we don't have any ownership of the products that we make that are developed by us in our network. But everything we have and is made by us or through us is shared freely for free use. We don't charge money for free adoption of the product. And maybe one of the best examples for this is one of our products is a serious game, a crisis game, a game that you play normally live with about 15 people. And these people work in 5 departments for a Ministry of Transparent Affairs. Of course, this is a fictive organization, but when you work for this organization, you encounter a situation where the organization is being hacked and also ransomed. And within 1 hour, you have to deal with all things that come by. Well, we have a special standard version of the game, but this standard version has been adapted to many organizations. There's a special waterworks version, there's a special municipal version of the game, there's an English version of the game, we even have a teenage version of the game. And all these versions are made by other people in our network who wanted to adapt the game a little bit other videos, a little bit other text to make them more appropriate for their organization or for their sector. And this is all good as long as they mention CIP as the source and they deliver this adapted product again back to the network. So this Creative Commons ruling gives us the possibility to get more and more products by the initiatives and the work of our network, and others can share with it as well. Well, the final part, and I'll go into that a little later as well, the final bullet on this sheet is we are moving through Corona, of course, as many others are, from live to online. We already did stuff online, specifically a community website behind the password. But what we're doing now is moving much towards online activities. This participation of me in this webinar is one of the examples, but we've been producing films, starting up our own YouTube channel in the last 1.5 months. Myself, I used to go around and talk a lot to people, networking, and what I do now is find myself at least 20 or 30% of the week editing movies and doing other stuff. And I believe, and we believe that when the Corona situation matures and evolves, this new development, these new tooling will not go away completely. I believe that we will go into a hybrid situation where, in addition to our live meetings, we will still have much more than before used for webinar kind of things, video introductions, and there will be another blend, another balance in well, live and online tooling as ever before. Because of Corona, we were forced to develop these tools, and before that, we didn't have the time or weren't provoked enough to invest time and some money in that, mostly time. And now we do, and we will continue on that. Okay, our current network is based on the people that participate. Again, you don't pay money for that, and our network encompasses now 3,500 persons, more or less, maybe 10 more, maybe 10 less, but around the 3,500 people, and they represent 700 organizations. These 700 organizations are about 90% government, and 10% is a mixture of knowledge partners, those are private companies, and other organizations supporting our network. These knowledge partners we still have, but with all these people, we do not give them a commercial platform. We do not work with sponsoring. We invite them to share knowledge, to create products, or to share knowledge in another sense. So companies like Microsoft and IBM are part of our network, but also ethical hackers, privacy lawyers, and those kind of organizations. With every single private organization that's part of our network, we have an agreement in which they sign that they understand the principles of our network and that they have the intention of investing X amount of hours in knowledge, in time, in our network. So again, it's not a platform to be used commercially, but we want to participate in their knowledge, and they, of course, get some context. Well, the diagrams give you, in Dutch, I'm sorry, some idea of where these organizations come from and where the persons come from. Most persons come from ZBO. ZBO is the executive organizations like UWV, the organization that we're part of, which is our main sponsor that supplies the unemployment benefits and are very closely related to what we're doing now for supporting entrepreneurs that have loss of revenue due to Corona. But this is only one of the organizations. We have many more in Holland. Most people in our network come from that organization, and the second one is municipalities. We have, of course, many municipalities. As the last count is, I think, 359 municipalities in Holland. If you look at organizations, the left bottom diagram, most of the organizations by far come from municipalities because there are so many. Well, that's about the content of our network. And as I said, we have knowledge partners and we have participants, and we made this up in the word cloud. The participants are these public sector organizations. And I think, and I never did the official count, that we have a saturation of well over 90% of all the organizations that are interesting for us, that are part of the public sector in any way, at least government, that are part of a network. And you see many kind of organization names in the right word cloud, which all represent the 100+ knowledge partners that we have in our network now. And it's still a very active network. Like last year, the amount of network attendees grew by, I think, at least 20%. So this is not that we started in 2012, we saw a big rise, and now it's sort of stable. It's far from stable. It's still very much alive and kicking and growing. We have products and services, and this is one way of depicting them. One of our main streams from which we started is secure software, information security. We made baselines, standards, methods for all kinds of hardware and software, for waterfall development, for agile processes, for mobile tools. We do a lot with IoT, and what you said earlier about 5G and drones. In our special work group IoT, this is one of the topics that we are addressing and looking at for future interest specifically. But also testing for chains, and not the iron type, but many organizations work in chains. Other types of organizations in the process that they're involved in, and that creates a lot of challenges and difficulties sometimes. So if you want to test software or toolings in a chain, you have to do other things than if you only have to test it for your own organization. And of course, cloud services is very important. Cloud services used to be forbidden to be used by the main government organizations for many years, and since about 2 years or so, I don't have the exact date at hand, the door is open again for cloud services. So this is specifically an area of rapid development in the usage from government people. Well, in the middle we see the square of privacy. Privacy is of course the other main issue that we were founded for. There also we have many tools in the program that is connected together, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. And the last bullet in that box says ethics. We have a specific group that is about ethics. It's not officially part of the privacy portfolio, but ethics is a development. Of course, it's very much a container issue. You can go many ways with ethics, but related to information security and privacy, you can still do very interesting things, very interesting meetings on the topic, which attracts many people from our network and also new people. The same is true from the right box, procurement. Also one of the programs that we do for the government. The procurement of hard and software that has to be safe is a specific issue, and nothing was standardized for that. If you want to, of course, this is also European legislation, but if you want to purchase something for over, what's the number now, 320,000 euros or something, or 230,000. Anyway, if you want to purchase something as a government, there are many rules you have to apply for and many steps you have to take to make that happen on a proper basis. And this is always a struggle for the people who want to purchase, but also the people who want to offer. So what we do here is offer people in government and public sector specific rules for security that the providers, the people who want to deliver the tools, have to adhere to. And that means that you don't have to hit them with the full container of every possible rule, which used to be the habit. So both on the purchasing side and the delivering side is easier, more specific, and therefore also more secure than before, because it's easier to adhere to, easier to check, and easier to describe. And so this is an important and very strategic activity for us right now. The bottom one, awareness. awareness is also very much a container issue. What's the situation with awareness concerning information security and privacy? Who really knows? Who ever really did a good survey on that? Many people say, of course, it's an issue. It's still a very big issue, but nobody really knows how big. And we feel that there's still a lot to be won there on board level, executive level, but also on executive level, and on the work floor as well. Although many things are known there, but awareness is still a big issue. And we believe in experiencing things. So CIPcasts are our film versions, which we publish on YouTube. Films are good. Films can be instructive. Films can be specifically related to a topic, can be very technical, can be more broad, depending on the target audience. But gaming is a very interesting way, because experiencing something firsthand, like going through this cyber crisis, if you work on this fictive ministry, is a very interesting way of absorbing knowledge, getting a feel for what will really happen. It lasts longer in your mind and you remember more of it. So we really believe in these games. They're very attractive. They're very popular also. If you look at these municipalities that I mentioned, like 359 municipalities and over 260 mayors of these municipalities. So about 2/3 of them really personally played these games themselves, which is really good. We're working currently on a new game, and this is something we will really continue. The left square stands for Object Repository. We have sort of a wiki system, which is managed by the government, and we are responsible for filling and maintaining the items in that wiki concerning privacy and information security. So the baseline information security, government, BO, but also the privacy baseline are part of that system, and you can look through it in a different way, which of course Wikipedia is used for normally, to find things in another way and maybe a more structured way. So this is what we do. How do we do this? Many activities per year, almost 150 meetings per year normally. 2 conferences, which is the picture on top of a little castle that we use 2 times a year, of course, not anymore. And for all kinds of themes, we have different levels of groups. We have a domain group for most domains, like ethics and privacy and information security. And a domain group consists of like 20 people or so, or maybe more, that have senior knowledge, senior experience, that can look a little bit more ahead into the future, that can help program meetings for a broader scale of participants. And these broader scale of participants, we call them practitioners communities. So practitioners also indicate something that we do. CIP does not involve itself very often with strategic things, although we do have interest in that area. We are not on really the operational level on the work floor, but the practitioner side on the technical level is something that we are by far the strongest in. So the practitioners can teach each other, can learn from each other, and these communities are very important in what we do. Well, in addition, we have some expert group and work groups. We organize workshops and special interest meetings and these games that I talked about. Some external lectures like this one. And again, due to Corona, we do much more online than ever before. We have a specific community network, an intranet or an extranet, for which you have to apply, but you can get a free entrance if you're part of the public sector, and we can check the email extension of your application there. And we've published like 10 times more information on that network than last year, in addition to all kinds of video activities. So we do a lot more online than we ever did before. And in addition to specific themes, we also do 2 communities for specific jobs. For DPOs, the data protection officers, and for the CISOs, Chief Security Information Officers. We call them DPO Cafe and the CISO Circle. It has to have a name that attracts a little bit. And what we do is that we want to help these people perform better in their jobs. Of course, they have job-specific interests, like how do you make and maintain and purchase safe software. But that's a different story than how do you function well as a CISO? How do you function well as a DPO? So many of these people are really lonely. We did surveys to both of these people in the government area, which is our main target audience. And many of them say that they are lonely, they don't have employees, that they have specific challenges in their own job. And they say it by mouth themselves as well if we meet them, and we still do meet them, luckily, by teleconferencing. So they need to talk to each other. They need to have peer contacts and talk to each other, which they cannot do internally because there is no one other DPO in their organization usually. There is no one CISO, just them. So they need these contacts. CIP also has influence, and this is something that is more informally organized. We have a few board positions. Our director and founder, Ad Ruil, has board positions in the IBD, which is the information security part of the Municipalities Association. We're part of the forum standardization and a few others. We have high-level network contacts, both in a few ministries, but also in the Chamber of Commerce, in the political arena. We do some surveys, not too many, but some, as we have done before in the last 2 years for DPOs and CISOs. We have been working on establishing, and this may interest you, on a DPO register. DPOs are jobs that a lot is required from, and some has been described in the GDPR, but not that much. And there's no real guideline for how these people should work, what kind of background they should have in knowledge. So a register where you could have these things in place and check them and publish the register will be a very good thing. But as you see behind in the slide, it says on hold. We have to on hold it because there's no financing to start this stuff right now. It's still a very well-embraced initiative, both from the ministry and from the DPA also, and many people in the field. But we need money to get people in an organization to start up with it. So we're still very eager to do that if financing possibilities come by. But also that has been hit by Corona, because I'm not sure if this is true in all your countries, but the Dutch government puts a lot of money currently in supporting entrepreneurs who lack income through the Corona crisis. So many ministries are very reluctant to enter into new financing things for the time being. Of course, we also have something to say about the Corona app, which is in development right now. And that means that we gave out a handout for a Corona app, which is good and safe and will be accepted just as a sign, as a signal from our organization. Because this is one of our working fields. It is about privacy, it is about information security, and the Corona app created a lot of interest and doubt through our society in Holland, but also on the professional area, we felt it good to give a signal towards very specific people who have to do with this, like the Ministry of Public Health and the Privacy Authority also. And where possible, we promote the attention for cybersecurity and privacy in public policy and programs, because that's our part. Well, moving into privacy specifically, we have a toolkit, as I said before, of specific instruments, and we call the total kit the grip on privacy. And this is designed to achieve insight within your organization and control on privacy for your organization. It was developed out of the privacy baseline, which is an 80-page baseline document, not to be read in detail by most people, but the professionals will surely find it interesting. And many organizations use the privacy baseline as a bottom line for their privacy organization. Part of it is a maturity model, a 5-layer maturity model, and a privacy self-assessment by which organizations can check themselves where they are, where they want to be, and what kind of things they have to do to get to that ambitious level they have. And this 1 to 5 level maturity model, we find that many organizations would be wise to have level 3 as a goal, but they score not even on average level 2. So much work still has to be done there. And we, of course, organize also workshops to help organizations to to process the output of the self-assessment tests that they do. And we strongly believe in governing privacy through the privacy governance handout, and privacy by design is also something that we do in workshops, because it all starts at the beginning, which is the design, whatever process or organization you want to build. Okay, something about the Dutch DPOs. The picture you see is not a natural beast, but the picture of how DPOs could feel themselves when they look at all the demands people and law has for them. A sheep with 5 legs. We have to do with the AVG, which is the Dutch translation of the GDPR, and the UAVG, which is the execution law, the specific execution law of the GDPR in Holland. As you are probably well aware, when you're a privacy professional, every country has adopted the GDPR in Europe, but also could have an additional law or an addendum or whatever it's called in your country with local specifics. And these laws are pretty steep. Well, a lot has been asked from DPOs in every country, but also in Holland. So is it a mission impossible? We did a survey 1.5 years ago, and we found that most DPOs do their job part-time. 80% of the Dutch DPOs are DPO only part-time of their working life. And many of them, like more than half, come from a legal background. But if you want to increase awareness on privacy, if you want to change organizations, to change behavior on the work floor, you need other skills than what many legal people have. And again, some of them are sheep with 5 legs, but many of them are not, at least not in our country. In fact, most of them are not. Many of them don't have an official budget, only 18%. And some can get more through a project proposal. But it is something that is a significant number that many people don't have a fixed budget. Also, DPOs in Holland at that time mostly busied themselves giving advice and support to the organization. While if you look at the GDPR, they should also check and be in control and increase awareness. And most people did not do that at that time. The other side is that if you ask them, are you satisfied with what you do and how you do your job? Most of them said, yeah, reasonably well. But are they right? Is it justified for them to say that? If you don't do many things that are also so very important. Just questioning. And this is what we what we addressed in the DPO cafe meetings that we had the last few years, to help them see that, to help them increase in the things that they did not focus on yet, which were so very important, like checking if things go right, like increasing awareness. And again, this survey showed that they are probably pretty lonely in their job. So the main conclusion of this survey was the DPO in general needed to grow towards more maturity, not just in the things that he or she is doing, but also in the way they are doing it. And this is not only true for the DPOs, but also for the DPA. The time that this survey was published, the first time we had our first DPO cafe, and one of the people present was one of the directors of the DPA in Holland, and we officially offered them the results of the survey. And they also agreed that their organization also had to grow in maturity. So this is a sector-wide thing. Again, and this has to do with this initiative that we took and is on hold. We believe that it's good to formalize and certify basic expertise and protect DPO as a profession. But it needs legislation, or it needs an organization who can do that. And for that, you need some money to have people work on that full time. And that's not the case right now, unfortunately. We still need to increase political awareness. And this became blatantly obvious when we were talking about a Corona app in this country. We had a minister who said that we needed the Corona app, or maybe even 2 Corona apps, and they could do it in a couple of weeks. but there was so much confusion about that. Also on the privacy side, that you need much more time to do that properly. And like I said, these DPOs, they really desired much more peer contact. With some beers, that will be nice. We don't call it cafe for nothing. And they call themselves fellow sufferers sometimes, because they go through the same thing. They have the same challenges, the same frustrations, the same pain, the same hopes. Okay, the Dutch DPA, AP, Autoriteit Persoonsgegevens. I was on the phone with one of the high-level managers of the AP only, 45 minutes ago, to give you the latest update on what they're doing. And every DPA will be different. And I know this for sure because this certifying thing about DPOs is addressed very differently in Spain and in France, because that's where the local DPA is taking care of that issue. In Holland, they have chosen not to do that. In many other countries, they have chosen not to do that at this time. So if they don't do that, what are they doing? Well, some remarks about what the AP is doing. They're growing in numbers and in maturity. They're growing in numbers in terms of employees. 2 years ago, they had 100 people. Now they have just over 180. They grow in number of complaints. I don't have that figure at hand, but it's surely rising. And they're growing in maturity. They do their job better. They have more people with experience. So they're doing a better job than a year ago, and certainly a better job than 2 years ago. They also do something about about Corona, many things related to Corona, as a matter of fact. And this is one of the things that I heard just 45 minutes ago. There is a new law, a specific COVID-19 law in preparation, which deals with the things related to, the privacy issues that come around the corner. But this thing is happening, and it doesn't have to do with the app, which is still in development, and where the AP is also claiming their role of checking and testing. It has to do with location data, what you do with people, where you can monitor them. It has to do with guarding medical urgency borders, where the patient's privacy can be an issue. It has to do with homeschooling and the privacy that schools organize for students. It has to do with many people working at home right now and what kind of video chat apps you use. Well, that's not specifically Corona related, but it's so an enormous boost due to Corona, of course, as everyone has seen and experienced themselves. So a lot of Corona specific activities have been boosted by and embraced by the AP, which is a good thing. The AP is also becoming, and this is truly a new course, becoming more embedded in society. It used to be a little bit aloof, distant. They were the ones able and capable of giving you a fine if you didn't have your act together. But now they openly communicate with what used to be radical organizations like Bits of Freedom, with MC International, with the Dutch Consumer Organization. So they really want to be more embedded in society. They want to pick up and take seriously signals from all around the society as well, which is, I think, a very good thing. Another thing that I was told these 30 to 45 minutes ago, something is going wrong, I think, with my screen. Do you still see my presentation?
Yes, Walter, we can.
Okay,
so
I'll continue, yeah. Sorry. Is what he called, this guy from the AP, they're speeding up the procedure for binding corporate rules for multinationals. We have many multinational headquarters in our country. And if you want to pick up business, you need to have an approval for the binding corporate rules. And usually this procedure would take 5 years or so. And before the approval would come through, you were not officially released into developing and deploying your services. Well, of course, many organizations still did that. and we're waiting for the fine, if any. But now it's taken seriously by the AP, the Dutch DPA, to really speed up that procedure, because we want to be an attractive company for multinationals to headquarter here. Also, the AP is looking into biometrics. If you look at technical developments, this is one of them, of course. And very recently, a company was fined 750,000 euros for using illegal or unnecessary fingerprint scans by their employees. Of course, what they also do, because they don't have unlimited means, is that they use media impact as a signal in specific cases. So a few years ago, they did something with Facebook. More recently, they are inquiring around TikTok. Organizations with media exposure are labeled, but not just organizations with a big name, but also situations that are very strong, are sometimes labeled in the media as an example, as a role model, to work as a strong signal towards other organizations, so they won't make the same mistakes. Okay, one of the specific items that the AP covers is also this public sector, which usually have obligatory DPOs. They must have one, and they're checking if they do have one, because they want to look into the digital government as one of the specific targets. Funnily, in April or in March, there were still 3,000 complaints, which is like 25% from 2019 still waited to be dealt with. So they are not really done yet with everything that comes their way, but they're working through it. They're doing it faster than before, but they're not there yet where they want to be, which is probably the case for every organization. The final part for me is something interesting as well. We do not have an authority on AI and algorithms yet. And many more companies, many more organizations that already exist in Holland are applying for a position where they can be the AI police in the country, so to say. But the AP specifically names AI and algorithms as one of their serious target points, focus points for the next 3 years. So they really want to play a specific role there. And of course, the GDPR says something already about the topic, so it's not really weird that they do that, but they really have the ambition to play a role in that area as well. Okay, that's about the Dutch DPA. My final slide covers the Corona app. In March, the Minister of Public Health in Holland stated that Holland needed apps to help people to be safer. Mainly the contact checker, to see whether you are in the vicinity of someone who has had or is having corona, and that you can do the checkups later when you find yourself with the virus checked again, and then see who you were in contact with, people you do know, people you don't know, and you can have an app to use that. Specifically meant to be used on a voluntary basis, because if you make it mandatory or obligatory, many people will have problems with that. So there has been discussions about voluntary or not, but this is the situation, the standpoint from the Dutch government. It will be voluntary. The first phase, like I said before, they thought in 2 weeks we could do this. We had a hackathon in 1 weekend, and most systems crashed, were not available, and there was a lot of criticism on that planning. So really a case of too quick and dirty. The shortlist was released too soon. Some companies were not on the shortlist, should be there. Some were on it that should not be there. And there was much criticism, both from the privacy and cybersecurity side. So I think it was very wise for the government to get back to the drawing board and start over again, which is where we are now in phase 2. And as I understood yesterday from one of the people who is actively involved in with this process, is that the code for the app that has been chosen, as far as I know now, is already online, but that the DPA is in process, the Data Protection Impact Assessment. And what that means exactly in terms of timing, nobody really knows. The last information was that the goal was to start testing this app in June. Whether this will be made, this deadline, I'm not sure. But this is where we are in Holland concerning this app. So those are my sheets. Apart from this one, we have two websites, one open website, that's the right one. You can use the QR code. And all our products are published on that website, www.cip-overheid, which is government.nl. And we also have an English section on the website where many products are available in English as well. The left one, the CIP community, is cip.plio.nl, which is a closed network only in Dutch, and you have to apply for entrance. And if you have a public sector mail extension, then we will grant you access for that. But again, it's only in Dutch because that's what our target audience is, where our target audience is. So, are there any questions? Ulrich, did you receive anything through the chat or by any other way?
Not yet for the moment. I launched a couple of polls though, so I'm trying to keep people busy in another way. But well, firstly, thank you very much, Walter, for the very interesting and insightful presentation. I think it's been really good to get a bit of that flavor from both your user communities and from the government perspective, and also your relation to the DPA in the Netherlands. And I think to a large extent, many of the things that you mentioned are very similar to what we are experiencing here in Belgium, and likely also in a number of other European countries. I think specifically for Belgium and the Netherlands, since both of us are regarded as the somewhat smaller countries, and Belgium even more than the Netherlands, we probably have a DPA that's also not yet that, how should I say, I don't want to use the word powerful, because they are very powerful, but they don't yet have think about themselves that they have all of the necessary teeth that they need, like their French, Spanish, German colleagues, or UK colleagues for that matter.
So the Dutch AP is powerful, and they do realize that because they can write out fines, and they do that. Not very often, but they surely do. But it's interesting to say that, and maybe I didn't explain that clear enough, we as CIP do not have any power. We do not have any mandate, but we do have influence, and people recognize us as a player to reckon with because of our many members now, and because of the quality of our products and our meetings usually. But we also realized that we have to fly by experience and have to fly by influence and relations, and that every experience, every last experience is the thermometer, the temperature of how they experience us. So we have to prove our quality and our level of influence, and the fact that people trust us, we still have to prove it time and time again. We work with volunteers in our big network. We only have 10 people in our central network, financed by this executive organization UWV, and 2 programs from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So our budgets are really limited. So we have to really be very effective and very entrepreneurial as a team, and to do things with a few people and a few means as effectively as possible. And we are able to do that because people really like us. I don't mean that the people like me personally so specifically, I don't mean that, but people experience the value that we have for bringing them together. And that's why this really works, and that in connection with, we don't charge money, we communicate personally, and we want to be well, politically sensitive, but also still entrepreneurial. We don't sit back until people say that we can do something. One of our ideas is that we normally prefer to ask for forgiveness tomorrow, but not ask for permission today.
Yeah.
And that seems to work on a decent level. We don't want to harm anyone or any organization. We don't want to be harmful. We want to build up and help.
That's of course what we appreciate from our Dutch friends and colleagues, is that you also are pretty direct and have a good strong opinion about things. So that's what we would expect in any case from you. And I didn't want to say either on our side that the DPA is not powerful. They are very powerful. They do show that they have teeth every once in a while. But I think it's also a struggle for them to get people to act according to what the regulation is demanding for, and at the same time being there to support. Because I think from the minister in this case responsible for privacy, he's also very supportive to them. But he's also very much a strong supporter towards companies and towards the business in itself. And so trying to find the right balance has been a challenge for many companies. It's actually very interesting to hear your perspectives in this case as well from the side of the government. I think we have similar types of experiences also with our public authorities and government institutions. What you didn't talk about is any litigations. Are you aware of any litigations, incidents that have taken place in the Netherlands through the public institutions that are participating in the CIP and that basically have received fines, and how does the fine system work for public authorities in this case?
Oh, by heart, I do not know any government organization that has been fined. They could be there, but the examples that I know are private organizations.
Right. Yeah.
And I was surprised to hear this morning, as I mentioned, that a specific COVID-19 law is in progress, because there are many temporary rules, and I'm not sure about all the legal terms in English, but they're trying to bind it all together in specific laws, because there are, of course, many challenges towards economic motives for wanting to have as many multinational headquarters in our country as possible. But they do have to pay taxes. They do have to by our privacy rules. So this thing of binding corporate rules to expedite that process is very important. And at the same time, all the medical stuff, medical urgency is very important. But the privacy of the patient is still also very important. So the only thing, but that's not government. One of the other focus points that I didn't mention yet from the AP, is that data trading is one of their focus points for the next years. And they did fine a tennis association for selling their list of members to a commercial party. And this was also a fine of over, I think, 500,000 euros. So a serious fine. But again, no government, and I do not have experience or knowledge of any government organization that has been fined. They have been warned a few times. But what I really like, as I said also in one of my last sheets, is that the AP is trying to become more embedded in society. Mm-hmm. They are powerful, they have teeth, they can bite, but if that's all they do, they don't have many friends. And they also need friends to get the signals that they need to be as sensitive to developments and how do you say that? Acceptance, social acceptance by people, by private people, and also by companies and by governments. If they're only a watchdog with teeth that bites, no one really likes them, and the signals stop getting to them except complaints. So I really like it that they want to try to balance both the biting and being a nice dog that wants to help them. It's a bit like a Dutch policeman. We have a specific culture in this country. And we used to have a film, a very nice commercial of one of the banks many years ago, and there was a song with that 50 million people. And one of the shots in the film was that you saw two police officers walking about, and two girls came by, and they just picked up the cap from the policeman's head and put them on their own heads. And you saw the policeman reacting with a smile. That's totally different than what we see in movie pictures now from the US. And that's, of course, a totally different story. But our government is usually friendly. The way our prime minister talks and exposes himself, he goes to his work on a bike usually. So this is really about people who are in a position of power, but who really want to be open for contact for all levels of society, all kinds of companies. because if you talk about problems, then you can find better solutions. And finding them is the final level of having to enforce a solution if people don't listen to you anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the same applies for Belgium to a very large extent. So it's a resolution chamber. They do work about some ways to try to resolve. They allow also for companies to adapt themselves, but there are fines. I think in our case, as many of our attendees here will know about, the most famous one in terms of public authorities was in the last elections, a mayor that used the public authorities database to send out directly invites to his people living in his community. So he got a fine, for quite normally, of course. Just maybe quickly also share with you the results of the polls that I launched.
Yeah.
And I wanted to launch the poll in relation to the first part of the presentation that you gave on really what CIP is all about and the type of information sharing. So I asked a question about what knowledge sharing that people are working with, their best practices. And what comes out is that actually most attendants are experiencing the best influence to them in order to be informed about GDPR, data protection, the challenges and activities through these types of events, conferences, webinars, activities, online even. There is, of course, also a number of them that are going or went to physical events. Also quite a number of them that are using awareness types of materials. When I asked the same question then the second time, I asked them in the first time for multiple choice, the second time it was a single choice. And then you see what pops up is definitely their preference is going to meeting with peers, practitioners, communities. And of course, I mean, it's quite normal, otherwise people would not be attending this particular webinar. And since they have some form of a relation also with us and with our communities, but I think it just gives another example or empowers basically the message that you gave, that the type of communities that we are running are very important to those practitioners, that the efforts that we are giving out is something which is valued and also helps them in their day-to-day practice. So I thank you very much also.
Sorry. When you introduced me, I'm not around in Brussels. I'm in Holland. So I cannot experience the famous Belgium hospitality and local beers. That surely helps in peer-to-peer contact as well, because your conversation is different and you get to get more signals, also non-verbal signals, which is better. So if we bounce out of this Corona thing and we can meet in person again, of course, things are becoming more and more released in this country and other countries as well. Everyone's looking forward to getting more personal meetings again. But this is better than nothing. And what we experience normally in a practitioners community meeting, how we do this is that we have like 100 people maximum. But we had a webinar series on ransomware recently, last month. And we had like 2,500 or like 2,700 people who watched live or later online on our YouTube channel, or got a message about the webinars on our LinkedIn accounts. So our exposure is increased through that as well. So we see the interest in webinars, and both in the live versions and also in the videos afterwards. It's of course interesting that you organized this webinar at 12 o'clock. Like you explained to me before, well, normally people go out to lunch in Belgium. They cannot do that now. Cafes and restaurants are closed, so why not join the webinar? Other people want to join it at 1 o'clock. Other people want to watch it tonight. So it's more easy to view whenever it suits you, and that increases exposure.
Yeah, absolutely right. We have the same attitude also towards beers, of course, and getting people around with some beers, and therefore also contribute a bit to the local alcohol beverage consumption. Since I'm broadcasting here from Leuven, which is hosting basically also Stella Artois already for quite a number of years since its inception. Yeah, well, with these two entities behind me, but that's about it. So furthermore, there's many other good beers in Belgium, as you know, that we can utilize for this.
Yeah.
Good. Beyond the beers, another question I had for you was in relation to some of the activities that you were mentioning. You mentioned the interest in this case also from the DPA in activities like the Corona app today. Punishing biometrics was something that also raised my attention. We had a couple of companies that were doing some experiments here over the last year in biometrics, and also to try to trigger a bit the attention, I'd say, of the DPA, to see also what can happen with end users, how acceptable they are to this. From retail, we saw this. From banking, we saw this. Companies are trying to monitor also a bit of the activities of those people within their environments. How do you see that the people in the Netherlands are accepting these things, and then also, for instance, specifically in the government institutions? So using fingerprint scans for employees. You said, okay, this particular company has gotten a fine for this. Is it something that's being picked up, for instance, for access control or surveillance, which is being used widely, of course, but using surveillance cameras to identify people for instance, access controls? Is that something that you see happens in the Netherlands?
Well, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not sure what the GDPR states about the details on these topics. I do know that technology is developing and that social acceptance is something else than acceptance by the AP. And companies are trying to find the borders, or maybe pushing the borders in some cases. And this has a lot of sides. Location data, which is related to the Corona app, but also to smart cities and smart mobility, is something that the AP is really looking into, and in their guard dog function, trying to monitor if things aren't moving way beyond what they esteem acceptable. On the other hand, what they seem as acceptable is not law. So sometimes things have to be tested in a court of law before it becomes law. And there are many details, I think, in that area where this process still has to be walked. The same is true for medical urgency and patients in a hospital. It's very normal to check things and have to move rapidly if the patient's health is in order and at stake. On the other hand, the privacy for the person or the patient is still a very important issue. And this is also true for employees. Are employers allowed to take temperature of all the employees when they come in? Are people going to church? Are the organizations allowed to ask them for their health? Well, this last thing is something that the Prime Minister said that we should do in all kinds of meetings. Ask people if their health is okay, just to check them. But how do you ask it? Where do you invade privacy and where not? So there's a really big gray area, which is influenced by public acceptance, by partly, I think, a lack of legal detailing. It's an interesting ride, but I don't have all the answers, and most people don't.
Right, yeah. Another thing that drew my attention was your slide with the sheep on 5 legs, the 5-legged sheep, yeah. Which I think is an interesting one. I wonder what the 5th leg is all about, but that maybe is for another time. There you mentioned that the majority of the DPOs that you basically surveyed indicated that they do their job on a part-time basis. I don't think it's that much different from what we see here in Belgium, and likely also for the other European countries participating here today. The question is, though, how much of that part-time activity are they really spending on the DPO activities? And are they having their DPO activities, and in this case, mixed with some other components and functions in their organization, which sometimes could lead to conflicts of interest. So we also recently had a case from a large telco operator that has received a fine for this particular type of reasoning. So that was not really segregation of duties, and so you have a mixed combination of a DPO, which then of course also results in some challenges. Did you get any answer to how much time that they're spending as a DPO, or maybe managing the DPO office or something of a kind?
Not by heart. The survey in Dutch is available on our website. I do have some information about their backgrounds. Most people have more than 10 years of working experience, and 78% over 10 years, 65% have an academic thinking and working level, and more than half of them is legal. They are in normal employment usually. Let me see where I can find this.
And I think especially also some of the serious gaming activities that you have, those would be definitely also of interest to us. And have you tried doing some of those serious gaming activities online, by the way?
No, we're still experimenting with that. Sorry, I did find a little bit. Okay. I did? Yeah. 30% of all DPOs spend less than 1 day a week in their job, which is pretty significant.
Yeah.
The other 70%, 71%, I'm not sure. Sometimes they combine it with the information security role, but that's only a minority, not even 10%, I think. So I would say most of the part-timers between 2 and 3 days. Yeah. Is what we found last year or 1 year and a half ago. Finally, is that only half of all these DPOs were involved in all the dealing with the complaints that people have. Of course, it differs greatly how big your organization is. If you are DPO for a big ministry, we have some really big-time DPOs there covering organizations with more than 150,000 people. It's totally different than if you're a DPO at a municipality of 300-400 people.
Yeah.
Your level of involvement, of course, from strategic to full operational, differs greatly depending on the size of your organization. So yeah, it's finally what we also found is we have an association in Holland for DPOs, and finally they have like 1,000 members. Mm-hmm. But you also have to register at the DPA. Mm-hmm. And the DPA has more than 10,000 registrations. Yeah. So where are the 9,000 that are not part of this organization, this association? Are they not serious enough, or don't they have time for it, or don't they have money for it? There seems to be a big gap, and this was one of the reasons why we said we need to go for a formal register to help them develop and maintain their level of professionality. But like I said numerous times, this unfortunately went on hold due to lack of financing. Yeah. But there is still an issue in growing into maturity. We are on our way. When we look back, we have come some way. When we look forward, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah,
true
absolutely.
For TPOs and true for the AP as well.
Yeah, the registration with the DPA is of course obligatory. So at least for quite a number of those companies that have to abide by it. And then of course the participation in the communities is typically something that's just to be seen as something additional, but interesting to see those numbers.
True.
All right.
Because there's so much development both in legal sides and in technology, if you want to take a job like a DPO seriously, you have to develop yourself continuously. So I'm not sure if these 1,000 members of the association are the only 1,000 people who take a job and their responsibility seriously. There are probably more. I know that there are more, but it is a signal that worries me, that worries us. And because it does take time in keeping up with technology, in keeping up with legislation, in broadening yourself, because many people are only a three-legged sheep. If you are from a legal background, you're not a transformation manager, mostly. Or if you know communications and you have been a senior manager, but you don't have a legal background, you have to dig into the legal background as well. So many people have to develop more legs than they usually have, or complement themselves by having a team with people who have what you do not have. And there's still a lot of room for improvement there.
Yeah, I think in many cases it's still very much seen as a burden. So as a result, the fifth leg in this case, or on the sheep, or the fifth wheel on the wagon, whatever you want to call it. Okay, Walter, I'd say thank you very much again for sharing your views and experiences.
Can I finish with my final slide? Where did I put it?
I can show it as well here if you like.
With my final slide, to invite people, if you want to know more about how to organize or manage an organization like we have, please feel free to send me an email and I will respond to my best of knowledge. Maybe we can help you as well.
That sounds like a very sensible thing to do. I'm going to leave your slide up here, but I'm also very happy to put it next to the presentation that we'll put online for people to get directly in touch with you. But I'm sure that we will be picking up this conversation also from our side and also with some of our partner organizations. We have many of those here in Belgium. It's a bit fragmented to that extent, but luckily the different organizations like ourselves, the Cybersecurity Coalition, Belgium, we are working together as much as we can, of course, with our different hats on and backgrounds. But I think there's many different similarities to what you within CIP are doing. I think a good lesson for all of us as well is by joining forces, we can do so much more in the double context. So both for the individuals as well as for the organizations. Absolutely. So with this, Walter, normally I would say I invite the attendees also to come to our next sessions. So with this, with this, I would say the same thing to you and also to the participants within the CIP. I would be very happy to share some of the activities that you would be doing online, to share that with our community, because there's also much mutual benefit to be reaped from. Right.
Thank you very much for having me for the stage, and thank you very much for all participants. And have a very nice and healthy day and period ahead of you.
And I see that coming from the reactions, the thinking is definitely mutual. Okay, have a safe further continuation of the afternoon. Stay safe and healthy over the summertime. And I hope that we will be able at least to meet again with a beer in Leuven in the Netherlands very shortly from here onwards.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.